Welcome to How to Get What You Want. This podcast is for driven women ready to claim their goals and navigate their careers with clarity and confidence. Join me as we explore real stories, tools, and strategies to help you steer your career exactly where you want to go. Let's get started on helping you get what you want. Hey, welcome. I'm so glad that you made the choice to be here today because I have a new friend that we're both going to get to know over the next few minutes. Cerys is with us today, and you have a really interesting business. I'd love for you to tell us about it. And she definitely plays really closely to what I talk about too. So I think this will be a really interesting dialogue.
I'm so excited to be here because I was diving deep into the history of your podcast and finding so many synergies that relate to what I do now, which is I lead operations for a global pet telemedicine platform where we connect pet owners with veterinarians online to get treatment and prescriptions conveniently at home. And you mentioned you've got a golden retriever.
Yes.
So we know that they can be trouble. And
Mhm.
certainly they're always going to give you an adventure outside of those clinic hours. And so that's where our company Vetster comes in. And then I also provide consulting services to startups, people going through change, entrepreneurs, to help them to get to that next level a little bit faster than they could on their own.
Oh, I love it. So both of those, I want to say that golden retrievers are a little less eating everything than when I had a lab. I mean, it was amazing.
Yes.
Like they consume, like girls were little girls underwear, in the yard
Yes.
everywhere.
So true.
So I would have, with the lab, I will never probably have a lab again, but I would definitely call you many, many times. So it's
Yeah,
interesting.
absolutely.
But the other piece that you said, consulting around, like, we have this idea that our careers and our journey is kind of mapped out, and we just have this flashlight and we're trying to find it along the way, or everybody else has it figured out. And what do you say about that?
Nobody has it figured out. I think I learned this way too late in my career, 25 years on. You at the beginning of your career, there's a ladder and it's prescribed and you've got titles and a framework and you're going to navigate along the way. And then the more senior I became, the more I looked around and sort of thought, well, nobody knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
They're all being creative. They're all taking their experiences forward and hoping that it works. Particularly in tech startups, it's such a creative field, but most often there isn't a playbook. And so what I realized as I looked around a room that was largely men and they didn't have all the answers,
Yeah.
I really had an aha moment as a woman in tech to say, well, if they don't know the answers, I'm confident enough that I can figure out problems.
Yeah.
And I'm vulnerable enough to know what I don't know. So I can ask for help or find the people who are experts in the things that I don't know. But I'm also brave enough to put my hand up and I'm going to walk through that door. And once I made that mental shift for myself, my whole trajectory changed. And now I really teach people that exercise of how do you just practice that vulnerability, the confidence that you know you're smart and you can figure things out. And now let's get that bravery and start putting your hand up.
Oh, I love that so much. And I relate too when I was reflecting on my experience in the corporate world and having people around me and observing that they were raising their hand or they were opting in and they were, my boss would, compared to my peer, he would always complain when he didn't get what he wanted or he'd ask for more. But I just always just stayed silent in my head thinking, I'll be rewarded. They'll notice me. But I was just so easy. I was the path of least resistance. They always just thought I was fine because I didn't say anything.
Yeah, classic Gen X.
Oh,
I'll work hard and one day someone will give me a gold star.
exactly. Well, I'm glad you called me Gen X. That's great. And it's so true. It's like what we work for and what we believe. And your boss wants you to be successful in the role you're in, but they don't have the longevity of what's really important to you and where you want to go, what experience, what exposure. There's so much more. So I love the optics of look around and see and be curious.
I talk to my team about that all the time. And I love what you just said, which is most often people managers will think about you in your role and measure you against that role. I talk to my team a lot about, I hope you are with our company for as long as makes sense for both of us. And I hope it is a wonderful journey. But at some point, you may decide to go somewhere else. And my responsibility while you're here, yes, there's an exchange of work, but my responsibility while you're here is to give you all of the experience that you will take forward in your next adventure. And I think that's a little bit counterintuitive. Most
Yeah.
people think, why would I prepare somebody to leave? And I can't think of anything better that you have been a stepping stone for somebody to go try
Yes.
something new, really take on their career. What a reward, what a gift that you as a people leader get to have, and that you can think about them not just today, but in the future. And when you think about today's world of work, it's ever changing. We're in a massive transformation with AI now. The world of
Mhm.
work tomorrow is not predictable. And so the best thing that I can do for the teams that I work with is use their role and other things going on at the company to get them exposed, get them new skills, let them try new things, let them experiment, let them be creative. And that's the most rewarding for me and hopefully for them long term.
So do you ask them, like, I can just
Mm.
I like, do you say, "What is your broader view of you, of your journey?" Like, I think there's probably a combination of getting it from them and seeing opportunities in them. Can you give us a little more color around that?
Yeah, it is exactly that. It's what do you see? What do you observe? But moreover, what do they want? I love to hire people who are non-traditional. And so what I mean by that is I have a director of marketing who was a video editor for Big Brother and worked in pet trade shows. And so she had creative, she had some great skills, she knew the industry,
Mhm.
but if I had just gone out and looked for a director of marketing and a resume, she might not have floated to the top of the list.
Yeah.
I take the same lens and apply it internally, and we have a lot of conversations. Where do you see yourself going next? Where might you want to pivot? How could I broaden your perspective? Do you want to be a specialist and go really deep? Or are you starting to think about how you could be a generalist or try new things? I often have people come to me and say, I'm in marketing, but I'm more interested in product and the intersection now between brand and product experiences. How might I start to get that experience in my role today so that in the future I've got some optionality? Those are wonderful conversations. You might not be able to provide everything, but there's nothing better than as a leader for me to say, okay, I'll do everything I can within your role today, but I actually know 3 people that you should start to talk to.
Yeah.
Start to build relationships outside of me. I don't have to be the central character in their adventures. It should be them, and I'm really here to round all of that experience out.
Hmm. Gosh, we tend to think that leadership is a science and not an art, and it's such
Mm,
an art. So as you were
such an
talking, I'm
art.
like, it listen to this is an example of leadership. Take a best practice from this. It's okay
Thank
to
you.
ask questions and discover for them because you're helping them see themselves by taking that time and space. And the other thing was like I hear leaders all the time. I go from meeting to meeting and meeting to meeting, and I am a really a prisoner of my calendar. I just go from one to
Mm,
another. What you're talking about takes that intentionality and space that
yeah.
people need. And so
And
how often do you do that? Oh, go ahead and finish
as
your
much
thought.
no, as I do it as often as I can. So certainly a lot of one-on-ones, our performance management time is centered around these conversations, which is where do you want to go next? Because
Mhm.
I trust my people to be able to learn the hard skills. The hard skills are not the challenging parts of people leadership. It's all of the softer, nuanced things that are a little bit harder to quantify. To your point, they're much more creative. But I also love to create spaces. So one of the things that we do at Vetster is I have a bit of a women's group and we go for lunch or we'll go to an art gallery. And it was really
Mm.
to give the women in tech a space where they could share their perspectives, their ideas in an environment that wasn't as counterbalanced as the day to day. And I get to learn so much from that. What are their challenges? What are they really facing? I'm heading into my
Mhm.
50s now. I am a white woman of privilege. I'm well aware of that. And so I can't pretend that I know everyone's
Yeah.
perspectives. And so being able to speak with the women in our organization, I learned so much. I learned about the challenges and opportunities for newcomers to Canada, which is where I'm based in Toronto, people who were coming from India, China, other countries where here I am on my DEI,
Yeah.
soapbox,
Yeah.
and they're talking about, I just hope my English is good enough so that when I come to the country, I'm respected. How do I get opportunities when I have different limitations? What are the opportunities for me as a newcomer to this country that may be different from somebody like me who was born here? And so creating those safe spaces, creating things that aren't a formal one-on-one interview. We would go to an art gallery. We would go for lunch. We would just
Love
go for
it.
a walk to the dog park because we always have dogs in our
Yeah.
office. So it was a natural thing to do. It takes the temperature down. It lets
Yeah.
people be a little bit more vulnerable. It lets them see me not as the boss with the title or somebody who's controlling their career. It lets them also see me as a human being and the challenges that I'm going through. But it
Mhm.
needs to be a two-way exchange. I have to be as vulnerable with them as they're willing to be with me to make that effective.
Yeah. I love how I have to just call this out. I love how when you explained who you were in your big role, you got a deeper voice in a very serious manner. Like, even that, like this bias around
Mm,
how we need to show up. We've been
yeah.
so conditioned that it becomes so invisible to us.
Yes.
But it's so important that we're always have an eye for that. I bet having pets around really helps kind of bring that to light. But I remember a friend of mine, I was visiting her. She's French from Paris, very accomplished. She was an engineer by schooling. She knew like
Wow.
6 languages. I was so in awe of her, and she just wanted to work in the US because her perception was that women learned confidence, and it was okay to
Interesting.
be confident. And I think even those ahas that are counter to our perspective are so important to understand.
It's absolutely true. And I was thinking about one of the episodes that you did around framing.
Mhm,
And one of the questions that I had, and I would love your perspective on this, is framing in the conversation is so important
mhm.
and to who your audience is. But when you start to layer in some of these intersectional complexities,
Yeah.
you can sometimes feel like you're not being authentic by doing this framing. And are you supporting some of the challenges? If I'm framing to a man, am I leaning into his biases versus holding my own? And I think it can get quite complicated for people across all sorts of different perspectives and walks of life of she has the perception that being confident is what is required
Mhm,
for success. And that may in part be true, but then are we also feeding a system where we're
mhm,
hoping to actually tease that apart? It
mhm,
becomes quite complex. So you can
mhm.
really, spin in the rabbit hole of this decision making. And so how can you keep it simple? How can you keep it as authentic as possible for people? And do so in a way. And I think that's as us as leaders to just say, I'm going to let the air out of the balloon just a little bit. And we're going to sit back and we're just going to give ourselves a little bit of grace and a little bit of gratitude to say, you can show up. I call it everybody's weird and wonderful. I want all the weird and wonderful, I want the creativity. I want your
Yeah.
perspectives. I want all the diversity of thought so that we can get the most out of people. And I think, unfortunately, in an effort to have pace, in effort to have rigidity and process, and deficiency, we often lose that and we want things to be perfect. And I
Yeah.
hear all the time from leaders, I just wish I had a better team. If I had somebody more capable, this would be better. And the truth of the matter is that's rarely the case. You want to zero in on somebody's superpower and say, I don't need to worry about your faults. Let's really lean in here. Let's find out what that nugget of gold is and let's bring that forward. And then we need to do it for ourselves because I think we also forget, as you described, we forget to do it for ourselves. What is the thing that I bring to the table and how can I
Mhm.
10x that so that I have the confidence that your friend is describing?
Yeah. And using that perception as fuel to give yourself like, "Oh, that's really interesting. How can I really lean into that?" I love what you said about the balloon, like, deflating it a little bit to give room in the room, and so, I do a lot around negotiation, and I have an expertise around that because that's my lens, but it
Mhm.
doesn't mean that I'm the best negotiator in every situation, and we
Right.
believe that. So to your point, when I think about framing and when I think about that air that you allowed to have, it goes back to we have to be open to and be curious because as soon as you assume that you're the one that knows, then
Mhm.
you have to. So when you think about framing in to understand the interests of the other party, it is a balance. And it
Yeah.
does feel manipulative to us. It can feel manipulative if it doesn't feel authentic.
Yes.
But if our intent is to move through with honor or we're as authentic as we feel comfortable.
Yes.
And maybe on the little edge of that, I think that's okay. But we all need to, we do need to change the way we approach something to honor the other person too. It's not just manipulative. It's what do they need data first? What's really important to them? How do I start there so that we don't just unbundle everything that's in here and we're like, oh, so what do you think?
Yeah.
But when we shift it and we frame it to the other side and we think about their interests, then we change the way we say it to help them understand.
Yeah. I love that because you just unlocked a bias for me, which is my perspective was this does feel manipulative, or they have the power to do that, or that's an expectation that hasn't been available to me. But reframing it exactly as you said, I'm a communications person by background. So I'm shocked that I wasn't able to see the dots here, which is ultimately speak to your audience, tailor your conversation to them, and really understand what is that trigger moment for them that will unlock the idea and the buy-in.
Yeah. It's so good. We all learn from one another.
Yeah.
Like there's always space to learn. And like you said, something came to me the other day, like you're always trying to figure out your positioning or the value you can provide. In fact, we're going to go through my framework, which is something that feels so like I should have figured this out 5 years ago. Why did it take me till now? But that's what it is. Us talking helps unlock things for ourselves. Like being a coach, I always am blown away by this question that I asked somebody that feels like it's so low hanging fruit. It's just like written right here. That's all I did was read what it said right here. And
Yes.
that person's like, oh my gosh, you've just shifted my reality. And
Yes.
it is about how do you get somebody else to think on their own, and that shifts their reality. And so
Absolutely.
doing that is, if you look at it as value for both sides, I get really excited. I love this
Yes.
conversation.
No, me too. Absolutely. I want to hear more about your framework.
Okay. So this framework is called Raise, and I am raising my hand right now. And it's all about opting in, which is what I've always talked about, is seeing, like you said, that there are opportunities around you. If you're not ready, you don't know where you're going, you'll miss an opportunity where somebody's looking for something. It happened to me. I remember a boss had this great opportunity and he brought it to our staff meeting. And I was like, oh, in my head going, I wish I had the experience for that. I wish I could do it. He was waiting for me to opt in and I didn't. And he told me later, he goes, I didn't want to just give it to you. I wanted you to ask for it. I wanted you to know it. And that was like, luckily, really early in my career, but then saw so many examples. So this whole raise your hand is don't just show up to a meeting. Don't just show up to a conversation. Raise your hand, meaning be seen, make an impact. And sometimes that doesn't come naturally as an extrovert farmer salesperson, like sometimes, and always thinking about the dynamics of people. I do have like this world that I can kind of automatically see. And sometimes people don't have that automatically, but this can help you start to open up that or lift that veil.
I love that. I love that. And I love that he wanted you to opt in to show your excitement for it, to show your confidence, to really commit, which I think is also something that leaders look from their people to see is, are you really ready for this? Do you really want this? There needs to be that level of commitment.
Yeah.
And, I always sort of say, you want to be brave enough to walk through the door. And what was it? Oprah, which is luck is just opportunity and preparedness, meeting.
Yeah.
And that's so true is we know that women in particular, you've done the work,
Yeah.
but let's broaden that out to anyone. You've done the work. You're smart. If you're curious, you have a superpower. And now put your hand up. What is the worst that can happen? Somebody says no. It doesn't go the way that you thought it would. You don't like it. All of those things are just data points to inform the next thing. And I always say to people, you're exactly in the right place. Don't worry about the career moves. Oh, was that a mistake? I don't know if this is right for me. You don't know until you get there. And so if you're learning something that is, oh, I don't like this, I don't enjoy it, or I'm not good at it, well, now you just have more information to make decisions. And so put your hand up.
Totally.
Try. Why not?
And even if you get a no, they know you want more.
Yes.
Or that you've left an impression, even if you don't get it right then,
Mhm.
that's okay.
Yeah.
At least they're like, okay, she'll ask something. She'll
Yes.
ask, she'll push back. And also, other people are doing it. Other people are doing it around you. So
Absolutely.
they're not going to say, oh, they're selfish or they're self-serving or they put themselves first. You're also teaching people to do it and have the courage to do it too, to raise their hand. That will
Yeah.
encourage others.
And you have to practice. The
Yes.
first time, it may feel really uncomfortable. I know certainly for me, when I started to put myself out there and take more
Yes.
risks in my career, I thought, oh, I'm going to get rejected. This is going to feel awful. People won't see what I see. I'm very lucky. I had some amazing sponsors in my career who did take some risk
Yes.
with me. But the first couple of times, it's uncomfortable. You may not get the response exactly that you want, but moreover, you're going to surprise yourself.
Yeah.
And you'll just build that muscle and that resilience. And it's an art form and it's a practice.
Yeah. All right. So let's go through the framework.
Mhm.
So I'm raising my hand again. So we start with the thumb. The thumb is R. So your fingers represent the 5 letters of raise.
Okay.
So R is recognize. And so recognize is, and I want people to like hold their thumb when they're in a meeting, recognize this opportunity, recognize when there's insight that you could add to it. What could you add to the conversation? What insight do you have? What gap of value is missing? So I'm going to have you respond to that.
I love that because I do when I like to build on conversation.
Yeah.
And so I might say, "Oh, Susie, I love that point.
Mhm.
I'm bringing this perspective to that."
Mhm.
So if I'm in marketing, I might be suggesting to an engineer, "That's a wonderful product idea. Did you know our customer insight also reinforces that will be a great idea, and here's why." And I love that because when I'm looking at my leadership team, they're coming from all different parts of the business, and there's always a way for them to build upon and, to your point, be seen. So
Mhm.
there's often parts of the organization that are administrative, customer support, HR, finance, that may not always be direct contributors to, say, a product strategy. But they have an ability to add in, to your point, to raise the hand and say, I think this is a great perspective. Why don't I go away and do the financial modeling for you? To
Yeah.
participate in ways that if we just left it to the conversation to be driven around the product roadmap, they might sit back
Yeah.
and not contribute or
Yeah.
contribute behind the scenes. And so now I get to see my people more. I get to hear from them.
Yeah. So before I go to align, which is the
Mm.
next one, I want to comment too that silence, no questions doesn't mean no questions, or silence doesn't mean no questions. Silence can mean I don't know what to ask or I don't know what
Mhm.
to add. So I love that you said bring in other people, especially if you hold influence. How can you bring in the gap by redirecting the conversation to somebody that hasn't contributed? And then
Yes.
the next one's align, and that's your pointer finger, and it's align your perspective to the speaker or the room's interests by bringing in the language, the metrics, what's important to them, help frame it for the value that you're bringing. So what do you think about align?
That goes back to my PR heart in speaking to your audience.
Uh,
Some people are wildly creative and they need to take different ideas and have that time to workshop something. Other people, they just want the numbers and they just want the data.
totally.
Some people need third party validation. They need an outsider's perspective to kind of say, yes, okay, we're not drinking our own Kool-Aid. And so understanding who you're speaking to. I think the other part of it also, though, is there's a responsibility. I always say to my team, I will tell you how to manage me. It's very
Yes.
simple, but it's specific.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
love to collaborate. I love details. I love to hear your work. I'm
Yes.
very trust oriented. But if you need to go pick up your kids, I don't need to know that. I'm not your
Yeah.
babysitter. And so I think there's also an onus on us being pretty transparent about what we
Yes.
need to give people that opportunity so that it also doesn't feel like it's behind, smoke and mirrors and difficult to get
Absolutely.
to.
Teach your team to manage up to you. Tell them exactly how to be successful in
Yes.
your organization. And I love how you were saying that this person likes metrics and this person likes this. Even going into a meeting and taking a quick thought glimpse of, okay, they like data. They want me to connect with them. They like to understand the backstory, and doing that quickly, even for a few minutes, can allow you to be aligned in that
Yes.
moment.
Yes. And we build all of our presentations when we bring new ideas to our leadership team. We build all of our presentations that way. So they've got a
Oh, that's
little something
great.
for everybody to make sure that it will resonate, it will really hit home, and that we're thoughtful about, okay, we know our data person will want to see the data. We know the finance person will want to make sure that
That's
we've
great.
gone through. So let's make sure we've got a little bit of something for everybody.
You're aligning well. You're teaching people how to align well.
Thank you.
Insert, it's the middle finger. So I will, go there. But it's inserting value. What value can you insert? What data? What question can you ask? What useful connection? So it's recognize a moment, but then doing it. It's taking that action. How can you insert something? And I also often talk to people, if don't be the person that is really talking too much, and don't be the person that's not saying anything. Meter yourself to the room. Try to give space. If you're not taking any space, take some.
Yes.
So what are you inserting in that? Be intentional about that.
If I think about what I do most often, and it goes back to an earlier point that you made, is this is usually the moment where I will pull somebody in. The insertion of the value is, hey, customer experience person, what do you think about this? What are the things that we might not be discussing right now that are going to be downstream effects? Or how could I tie this to another program that somebody is working on? You know who would be really valuable to this project is somebody who's not in the room right now.
Yeah.
Let's make sure we bring them in.
Yeah. And I love this so much because you're showing your vulnerability. You're saying, what am I missing? You have a different lens. I'm giving you permission to shine it on.
Absolutely.
So you're inserting what value that somebody else brings. I love that so much. It leads right to S, which is the ring finger, support. How can you publicly support somebody? And this can be simple. It can be really not simple. It can be very obvious, but it can be really nuanced. Like saying, hey, wait a second. Before we move on, I want to make sure I pause. Let's pause. And why don't you say that again? Or I really liked that point. Even if you want to so badly go to your point, how do you support somebody in the room?
There's so many ways. First, whoever is coming up with the idea, I love to zero in on a key aspect of that. How did you come up with that? What were the things?
Yes.
What was the process that you took? And giving them a moment, not just to present the idea, but present a little bit of their thinking, because I think the thinking is actually the win rather than the idea. I think the other part of it is bringing in other people and support. But moreover, when I think of support, I think about fixing someone's crown when they're not in the room. I think about taking the work or that conversation outside of the room and being able to go to my executive team and say, I was just in a meeting and I got to tell you about it. I'm really fired up.
That's cool.
Or, hey, we've just left that room. You know what you should do? You should go drop by the CEO's office. Just tell them about that idea. That's really good. And so trying to make sure and encourage people to take their own ideas forward outside of traditional means, where can you make that introduction? Where do I know the CEO will get super excited about something that you're working on? How can I put that forward, get the CEO even better to ask about that meeting? I think of support outside of the room, outside of the idea. How can it matriculate through the organization?
And you're teaching them too, those things that they can do to raise their hand. Like, this is not just in the room. It's outside of that opportunity when you walk by the office. Don't just scurry past.
Yeah.
How can you take a moment and say something? But I love how you think about what is that outside room that you can support others.
Yeah. I'm really proud of Vetster because the culture that we have and the level of support, we are absolutely pet obsessed. But when I watch how much people advocate for each other, the kudos that they give, the introductions, the validation of where ideas originate, even as it travels, our organization is about 70 people. It really is powerful to see that is how much they care about each other and how much they are willing to support each other and not necessarily put themselves first.
I'm afraid you're going to get a lot of people asking how they can join the organization. Dogs, pets, and a great culture.
Yeah, it's a pretty wonderful place to be.
That's awesome. All right, the last one is elevate the takeaways, the summarization. There's so often, and people really relate to this specifically to like a meeting or something, and time's up, I gotta go. And there's nothing that happens, and then you find yourself 2 weeks later having the same discussion again. That's one example
Mhm.
of really elevate the takeaways. And it also kind of goes to what you said too, is what are the people outside of the room that need to know about this? Or how can we broaden the scope of this? Make sure that you bring in some of that context or ideas or brainstorming around how can this not just get impact, but how can we make it stick?
Yeah. We're very lucky. We have an amazing director of product named Rob Daw, who over the last 2 years has fundamentally transformed how we orient into action as a business through his leadership. He's done such a fantastic job. And now I almost can't imagine a time where we weren't doing this, but we're very clear and deliberate in our execution coming out of new ideas. Everything is stack ranked and prioritized, and we have
Wow.
very clear ownership. And then those owners, what's interesting about that is it's not necessarily the most senior person. We have
Mhm.
business owners across all levels of the organization, and we're a very organized team as a result. And so it's really been nice because you see people at all different levels be able to take really huge, huge, impactful programs for our organization forward. And so I think we're maybe a little bit different to some other, maybe more creative or smaller businesses in that regard. Product lends a few tools of the trade to us. But I think the other part of it is how do you advocate outside of that room? How do you elevate and continue the story going and get people super excited about something? How do you bring more people into the fold so that they feel like they're not only aware of, but even if they aren't directly involved, that they're participating?
Yeah.
They're excited.
Yeah.
We talk about things regularly at town halls. We're constantly giving updates. We're using a lot of our communication tools, Slack in particular, to give shout outs, to give updates and keep the momentum going.
What a great organization. And I can see I now it's so funny that I said your name at the beginning and now it has such deeper meaning for me. Karis, right?
Oh,
Karis. Like
thank
those
you.
two together, like I can really see that you embodied that. Your parents knew what they were doing.
Oh, thank you
Um,
so much.
how do people find you? How can they connect with you? What did you want them to know?
Yes, I LinkedIn is my best place to connect. I love connecting with people there. So Cerys Goodall is the best way to go. And I love connecting with people, learning what other people are doing. So I can't wait to hear people's ideas, what they're working on. And so that would be wonderful.
That's awesome. Thank you for that. And I just did a workbook page on this framework. So I'll send it to you, Karis, so you can like
I
give
would
me
love
more
that.
feedback. And I'll also include that in the show notes if people want to download that because I think it's a
Amazing.
great thing to remind you to have your hand up so you don't forget to advocate for yourself. I'm
Absolutely.
so
And
appreciative of you being here.
oh, likewise. It's such a positive reminder, for you, for your team, for your organization. It's very optimistic.
Yeah, and I love the idea of going, "How am I gonna raise my hand today?" And
Hmm.
kinda challenge yourself around that. What
Yeah,
am I gonna do to make an impact and a difference for myself and others around me?
I love that.
Well, thank you so much for being here. It was such a pleasure to meet you, and I look forward to continuing to connect with you. Hopefully not in the middle of the night when my golden retriever has, like, eaten a can of something that she shouldn't have.
Well, you can call Vetster for sure.
Okay, Vetster, it will be on my quick call, so well, thanks for joining us today. We're so happy that you made that decision. Run over to negotiationlove.com if you want to join my weekly newsletter. Love to have you as a part of the movement of learning how to adopt a negotiator mindset. And always remember that negotiation is more than a skill, it truly is a mindset. Until next time, I'm Susie. I'm glad you were here.